Dr. Marcus Chun had seen many strange things during his 15 years as a xenobiologist aboard the research station Prometheus, but nothing quite like the small figure huddled in the corner of the medical bay. The creature was roughly humanoid, standing no taller than a human child, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the station's artificial lights. Most striking were her eyes, large, violet orbs that held an intelligence far beyond her apparent age. "She won't speak to anyone," Dr. Sarah Williams, the station's chief medical officer, explained as Marcus entered the room. The rescue team found her drifting in an escape pod near the Kepler system. No other survivors. Her ship had been completely destroyed. Marcus knelt down slowly, keeping his distance from the alien girl. In his years of first contact protocols, he had learned that patience was often more valuable than any advanced technology. The girl watched him with those remarkable eyes, her small hands clutched around what appeared to be a data pad of alien design. "Hello," Marcus said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Marcus. You're safe now." The girl tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made Marcus feel as though she was looking into his very soul. When she finally spoke, her voice was small but clear, the universal translator converting her words into perfect English. "You are different from the others," she said. "Your mind feels warm." Marcus raised an eyebrow. The girl appeared to possess some form of telepathic ability, which wasn't entirely uncommon among the various species humanity had encountered. What was unusual was her apparent selectivity in communication. "Different how?" Marcus asked, settling into a more comfortable position on the floor. The girl glanced toward the door where Dr. Williams stood, then back to Marcus. "The others think in straight lines. Cold calculations. You think in circles, like water flowing around stones." It was an oddly poetic description for someone who appeared so young. Marcus made a mental note to review the preliminary scans Dr. Williams had conducted. Age determination in alien species was notoriously difficult, and appearances could be deceiving. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. The girl hesitated, her small fingers tracing patterns on her data pad. "My designation is Zara, 9847 of the 3rd Educational Collective. But my father called me Zara." The way she said father carried a weight of loss that made Marcus's chest tighten. He had seen too many orphans of war during humanity's expansion into the galaxy, and the pain was universal regardless of species. "Zara is a beautiful name," Marcus said. "Can you tell me what happened to your ship?" Zara's eyes darkened, and she pulled her knees closer to her chest. For a long moment, Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "The Devourers came," she whispered. "They came, and they took everything. Everyone." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Devourers were a semi-mythical threat that various species whispered about, a race of beings that supposedly consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing behind. Most xenobiologists, including Marcus, had assumed they were just stories meant to frighten children. But the fear in Zara's voice was very real. "Tell me about your father," Marcus said, changing the subject to something that might bring comfort rather than terror. For the first time since Marcus had entered the room, Zara's expression softened. "He was a researcher, like you. He studied the old texts, the histories of peoples that came before. He said that knowledge was the greatest treasure in the universe because it could never be stolen, only shared." "He sounds very wise," Marcus said. "He was," Zara agreed, her voice growing stronger. "He taught me 17 languages, the mathematics of stellar navigation, and the songs of our ancestors. He said that as long as I remembered, a part of our people would survive." Marcus felt something stir in his chest, a mixture of professional curiosity and something deeper, more paternal. The girl was clearly traumatized, but there was a resilience in her that reminded him of his own daughter back on Earth. "Zara," Marcus said carefully, "is there anyone else from your people? Any other survivors we should try to contact?" Zara shook her head, her violet eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I am the last," she said simply. "The last of the Kithara." The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. An entire species, reduced to one small girl clutching a data pad in a human medical bay. Marcus had studied extinction events throughout the galaxy, but he had never been face to face with the sole survivor of one. "What can I do to help you, Zara?" Marcus asked. Zara looked down at her data pad, then back up at Marcus. Her next words came out in a rush, as if she was afraid she might lose her courage if she didn't say them quickly. Please pretend you're my father, she said, just until I'm strong enough to be alone again. The request hit Marcus like a physical blow. In all his years of first contact protocols, no alien had ever asked him for something so personal, so human in its simplicity. He looked back at Dr. Williams, who was watching the exchange with obvious fascination. Zara, Marcus said slowly, that's a very important request. Are you sure that's what you want? I know you're not really my father, Zara said, her voice gaining confidence. But your mind feels safe. And I miss having someone who cares if I live or die. Marcus felt his throat tighten. The girl's honesty was both heartbreaking and humbling. He thought of his own daughter, safe on Earth with her mother, and tried to imagine her in Zara's situation, alone, afraid, the last of her kind. If I agree to this, Marcus said, there will be rules, boundaries. I can't replace your real father, and I won't try to. But I can be someone who cares about you. Zara nodded eagerly. I understand. I need to not be alone. Marcus looked once more at Dr. Williams, who gave him an encouraging nod. They both knew that conventional first contact protocols didn't cover situations like this. Sometimes, Marcus realized, you had to trust your instincts over your training. All right, Zara, Marcus said, extending his hand. We can try. Zara stared at his outstretched hand for a moment, then carefully placed her much smaller hand in his. Her skin was warm despite its blue coloration, and Marcus was surprised by how human the gesture felt. Thank you, Zara whispered. Father. The word sent an unexpected jolt through Marcus. He had been called many things in his career: doctor, researcher, explorer, but never father by anyone other than his own child. The responsibility of it was both terrifying and oddly comforting. Over the next several hours, Marcus stayed with Zara as Dr. Williams completed her medical examinations. The tests revealed that despite her small stature, Zara was likely closer to a human teenager in terms of mental development. Her species apparently matured more slowly than humans, retaining childlike physical characteristics well into their equivalent of adolescence. Her physiology is fascinating, Dr. Williams explained to Marcus in private while Zara slept. Her brain shows activity patterns I've never seen before. The telepathic centers are incredibly developed, but there's something else. Something that looks almost like intuitive mathematics. What do you mean? Marcus asked. I mean, she appears to process complex calculations at a subconscious level. Navigation, probability assessment, pattern recognition, all happening in the background while she's thinking about other things. It's as if her species evolved to be living computers. Marcus thought about this as he returned to Zara's bedside. The girl was awake, staring at her data pad with intense concentration. What are you looking at? Marcus asked, settling into the chair beside her bed. My father's research, Zara said without looking up. He was studying something called the Great Filter. Marcus leaned forward with interest. The Great Filter was a theoretical concept in xenobiology, the idea that there was some universal challenge that prevented most intelligent species from advancing beyond a certain point. It was one possible explanation for why the galaxy seemed so empty despite the mathematical probability of abundant intelligent life. What did he discover? Marcus asked. Zara finally looked up from her data pad, her violet eyes serious. He found evidence that the filter isn't natural. It's artificial. Someone, or something, has been systematically preventing species from reaching technological maturity. The Devourers? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Not just the Devourers, Zara said. They're just one tool of something much larger. My father called it the Silence, a force that has been pruning the galaxy for millions of years, keeping intelligent life from reaching its full potential. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If Zara's father was correct, then humanity's rapid expansion and technological development would eventually draw the attention of this silence. And based on what had happened to the Kithra, that attention was not something any species wanted. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. Zara clutched her data pad tighter. Because humans are different. You've been expanding for less than a century, but you've already achieved things it took my people millennia to accomplish. You solve problems in ways that don't make sense to other species. My father believed that if any race could break through the great filter, it would be humanity. And you think this information could help us? Marcus asked. I think it might be the only thing that saves us all, Zara said. But first, I need to learn to be human. To think like you think. That's why I need you to be my father. Not just for comfort, but for survival. Marcus stared at the small alien girl, his mind reeling from the implications of what she was telling him. In the span of a few hours, she had gone from being a traumatized refugee to potentially the key to humanity's future survival. Zara, Marcus said slowly, if what you're saying is true, then there are people, important people, who need to hear this information. No, Zara said firmly. Not yet. If the wrong people learn about this too soon, they'll make the same mistakes my people made. They'll try to hide, to make themselves smaller, to avoid notice. But that doesn't work. The silence finds you anyway. Then, what do you suggest? Marcus asked. We learn, Zara said simply. You teach me to be human, and I'll teach you to see the galaxy the way my father did. Together, maybe we can find a way to fight back. The next morning brought new complications to Marcus's life as an unexpected father figure. Zara had awakened before dawn, her internal chronometer apparently still synchronized to her homeworld's rotation. Marcus found her in the station's observation deck, staring out at the stars with an expression of profound longing. Couldn't sleep? Marcus asked, settling beside her on the bench. I keep dreaming about home, Zara said softly. But when I wake up, I can't remember if the dreams are real memories or just wishful thinking. Marcus had seen this before in trauma survivors, the mind's way of protecting itself by blurring the lines between reality and hope. Tell me about your home world, he said. Maybe talking about it will help you sort through the memories. Zara's eyes remained fixed on the stars. Kithara Prime was beautiful. 3 moons that danced across purple skies, crystal formations that sang in the wind, cities that floated above vast forests. My people were artists and scholars. We spent centuries perfecting a single poem or mathematical proof. It sounds wonderful, Marcus said, and he meant it. It was, Zara agreed. But it made us weak. We were so focused on perfection that we forgot how to adapt. When the devourers came, we couldn't change fast enough to survive. Marcus watched Zara's reflection in the transparent aluminum window. Despite her childlike appearance, there was an ancient sadness in her eyes that spoke of wisdom gained through terrible loss. Is that why you think humans are different? Marcus asked. Partly, Zara said. But there's more. Show me your hands. Marcus extended his hands, palms up. Zara placed her much smaller hands in his, studying his fingers with scientific curiosity. 5 digits, she said. Opposable thumbs. You can manipulate your environment in ways most species cannot. But that's not the important part. She traced the lines on his palms. These are the hands of a species that builds tools to build better tools. You never accept good enough. Most intelligent species build tools, Marcus pointed out. Yes, but they build tools for specific purposes. Humans build tools for building other tools for purposes you haven't even thought of yet. It's why your technology advanced so quickly after you discovered fire. Each innovation became the foundation for 10 more innovations. Marcus had never thought about human development in quite those terms, but he could see the logic. Humanity's rapid technological acceleration had puzzled many xenobiologists. There's something else, Zara continued. Your species is naturally cooperative in a way that most others aren't. You share knowledge freely, even with potential competitors. Most species hoard their discoveries, but humans seem compelled to teach others. Not all humans, Marcus said, thinking of some of the more secretive military and corporate research he'd encountered. No, not all, Zara agreed. But enough. And that impulse to share and build upon each other's work. That's what makes you dangerous to the silence. Before Marcus could respond, Dr. Williams's voice echoed through the station's intercom system. Dr. Chun, please report to the bridge immediately. We have visitors. Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. In deep space, unexpected visitors were rarely a good sign. Stay here, he told Zara. I'll be back soon. No, Zara said, standing quickly. I need to come with you. It could be dangerous, Marcus protested. Zara fixed him with those unnaturally mature eyes. Father, if these visitors are who I think they are, then keeping me hidden won't help. They'll know I'm here regardless. The way she said father still sent an odd jolt through Marcus, but he was beginning to understand that Zara's apparent youth was largely an illusion. Her species might look childlike, but her mind was sharp as any adult's. All right, Marcus said, but you stay close to me. The bridge of the research station was a buzz of activity when they arrived. Captain Reynolds, a gruff veteran of the human colonial navy, was studying tactical displays while his communications officer worked frantically at her console. Dr. Chun, Reynolds said without turning around. We've got 3 ships approaching from the Kepler system. No response to our hails, but they're definitely not human design. Marcus felt Zara tense beside him. What do they look like? She asked. The communications officer glanced at Captain Reynolds, who nodded. Sleek, crystalline structures. Beautiful, actually. They're maintaining a distance of about 10,000 kilometers. Vorthack, Zara whispered. They're Vorthack ships. Who are the Vorthack? Reynolds asked. Zara moved closer to the main display screen. They're what you might call galactic peacekeepers. They enforce the status quo, maintain the balance that keeps species from advancing too quickly. Are they hostile? Reynolds asked. Not exactly, Zara said. They're more like administrators. They manage the galaxy's population by ensuring that species don't exceed certain technological thresholds. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together in his mind. They're part of the silence you mentioned? They are the silence, Zara corrected. Or at least, they're the public face of it. The Devourers handle species that refuse to cooperate. The Vorthack prefer more subtle methods. What kind of methods? Captain Reynolds asked, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm. Technological suppression, Zara explained. They'll offer trade agreements that seem beneficial but actually limit your development. They'll provide certain technologies while withholding others, creating dependencies. They'll encourage cultural stagnation through preservation programs. And if a species refuses? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Then, the Devourers come, Zara said simply. Like they came for my people. The communications officer looked up from her console. Captain, they're requesting permission to board. They say they're here on a welfare inspection for the rescued individual. All eyes turned to Zara, who had gone very still. They know I'm here, she said. They've probably known since the moment your ship picked up my escape pod. What do they want? Reynolds asked. Me, Zara said. They'll want to debrief me about the Devourer attack, catalog any technology one might have, and then assign me to a suitable world where I can live out my days under their protection. That doesn't sound so bad, Dr. Williams said. It's a prison, Zara replied. A comfortable one, but a prison nonetheless. They can't risk me sharing what my father discovered with other species. Knowledge of the Great Filter must be contained. Marcus felt something fierce and protective surge in his chest. What if we refuse to let them take you? Then, this station and everyone on it will disappear, Zara said matter-of-factly. And the Vorthack will report it as a tragic accident. They're very good at making accidents happen. Captain Reynolds was clearly struggling with the implications. So our choices are to hand over a child to what amounts to alien kidnappers, or face annihilation. Those are the traditional choices, Zara agreed. But there might be a third option. I'm listening, Reynolds said. Zara looked around the bridge, studying each face carefully. The Vorthack have been managing galactic civilization for millions of years. They're efficient, but they're not creative. They follow protocols, procedures, established patterns. And Marcus prompted. And humans don't, Zara said. You do things that don't make sense to other species. You take risks that any rational being would avoid. You cooperate with strangers and trust people you barely know. She looked directly at Marcus. Like agreeing to be a father to an alien child you met yesterday. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we give them exactly what they expect, Zara said. A traumatized child, too young to understand her father's research, clinging to the human who saved her. You want to deceive them? Reynolds asked. I want to hide in plain sight, Zara corrected. Let them see a little girl who needs her adoptive father, not a repository of dangerous knowledge. Let them think that human compassion has made you protective of a helpless refugee. Marcus was beginning to understand Zara's plan, and it was either brilliant or suicidal. You want me to formally adopt you? If they believe you're genuinely attached to me as your daughter, they'll be more likely to allow me to stay with you under their supervision. It's easier than forcibly separating us and dealing with human outrage. And then what? Dr. Williams asked. Then, we wait, Zara said. We learn about each other, and we figure out how to fight back. But from the inside, where they won't see us coming. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the station's systems. Marcus could see that everyone was processing the implications of what Zara was proposing. It was a long-term deception that would require everyone to maintain their roles perfectly. There's something you're not telling us, Marcus said. What happens when they realize we're not what we seem to be? Zara met his eyes steadily. Then, they kill us all and move on to the next species. But if we do nothing, they'll kill us anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Captain Reynolds rubbed his temples. This is insane. Yes, Zara agreed. Which is exactly why it might work. The Vorthack don't understand insanity. They've bred it out of their species in favor of logical efficiency. Marcus thought about his daughter back on Earth, safe in her school, worried about homework and friends and trivial teenage concerns. If Zara was right, all of that was at risk. Humanity's rapid expansion had likely already drawn the attention of the Silence. The question was whether they would choose to manage humanity or eliminate them. I need to know something, Marcus said. When you asked me to pretend to be your father, was this already part of your plan? Zara hesitated, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely uncertain. Partly, she admitted. I needed someone who would care enough about me to take risks. But the rest of it is real too. I do need a father figure. I am scared and alone and traumatized. Using that for our survival doesn't make it less true. Marcus studied her face, looking for signs of deception but finding only honesty. It was a sophisticated plan from someone who appeared to be a child, but then, again, Zara had already proven that appearances were deceiving when it came to her species. Captain, the communications officer announced, they're requesting an immediate response. They say they're prepared to dock whether we give permission or not. Buy us time, Reynolds ordered. Tell them we're preparing appropriate reception protocols for such distinguished visitors. As the communications officer relayed the message, Marcus knelt down beside Zara. If we do this, there's no going back. You understand that? I understand, Zara said solemnly. Do you? Marcus thought about everything he was risking, his career, his life, his actual daughter's future. But, looking at Zara, he also thought about what he might gain. The chance to help save not just humanity, but potentially all intelligent life in the galaxy. Dr. Williams, Marcus said, standing up. Is there anything in Zara's medical file that would prevent me from filing emergency guardianship papers? Williams smiled. As the chief medical officer, I can certify that the child is in need of immediate care and that you're psychologically suited to provide it. The paperwork can be expedited under emergency protocols. Captain Reynolds, Marcus continued, can this station's judicial computer authorize an emergency adoption? If Dr. Williams and I both certify it's in the best interests of the child and the safety of the station, Reynolds replied. Which, under these circumstances, I believe we can argue. Marcus looked down at Zara one final time. Are you absolutely sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Zara said. Will you really be my father? Not pretend, but really? The question hit Marcus harder than he'd expected. Somewhere between yesterday's conversation and this moment, the idea of pretending had evolved into something much more real. He thought of the responsibility, the danger, and the incredible trust this small being was placing in him. Yes, Marcus said. I'll really be your father. Zara smiled. Not the polite expression she'd shown before, but a genuine smile of relief and joy that transformed her entire face. Then, let's go meet the Vorthack. As the crew rushed to prepare for their visitors, Marcus felt the weight of his new reality settling over him. In less than 24 hours, he had gone from a xenobiologist studying alien cultures to an adoptive father planning to deceive one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Looking at Zara as she stood, the Vorthack delegation consisted of 3 beings, each more unsettling than the last. They moved with perfect synchronization, their crystalline bodies refracting the station's lights in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Their leader, who introduced himself as Coordinator Veltar, stood nearly 8 feet tall with features that might have been beautiful if they weren't so utterly alien. Dr. Chun, Veltar said, his voice carrying an odd harmonic quality that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. We understand you have taken custody of the Kithara survivor. Marcus kept one hand on Zara's shoulder, feeling her slight trembling despite her brave facade. I have. She's been through tremendous trauma, and I felt it was important that she have stability during her recovery. How commendable, Veltar said, though there was something in his tone that suggested he found human compassion more puzzling than admirable. We would like to speak with the child privately. No, Marcus said firmly. Zara has asked me to stay with her during any interviews. As her legal guardian, I'm invoking her right to have an advocate present. The three Vorthak exchanged glances, their crystalline faces impossible to read. Zara had coached Marcus on this response during the few minutes they'd had to prepare. Apparently, the Vorthak had great respect for legal procedures, even alien ones. Very well, Veltar conceded. Though we must insist on using our own translation protocols. The universal translator can sometimes lose nuance. Before Marcus could object, one of the other Vorthak approached Zara with a device that looked like a crystal headband. This will allow us to communicate more directly, the being explained. Zara looked up at Marcus with wide, frightened eyes. Do I have to, father? The word father came out perfectly natural, with just the right note of a scared child seeking protection. Marcus was impressed by her acting ability, even as he felt a genuine surge of protective instinct. If it makes you more comfortable, we can try, Marcus said carefully. But if you feel overwhelmed at any point, just say so. Zara nodded and allowed the Vorthak to place the device on her head. Immediately, her posture changed subtly, becoming more rigid, more formal. When she spoke, her voice carried the same harmonic quality as the Vorthak. I am Zara, 9847 of the 3rd Educational Collective, she said in a tone that sounded nothing like the child who had asked Marcus to be her father. I greet you in the name of the lost. Child of Kithara, Veltar responded. We mourn your loss and celebrate your survival. Tell us what happened to your people. Marcus watched as Zara's expression became distant, almost mechanical. The Devourers arrived without warning. Our defense systems were inadequate. Population reduction was total within 17 standard hours. Were any technologies compromised? Another Vorthak asked. Negative. All research facilities were destroyed in the initial assault. No data cores survived. Marcus felt a chill at how convincing Zara's performance was. She sounded like a traumatized child reciting facts she didn't fully understand, when in reality, she was carefully concealing the most important information her people had ever discovered. What of your father's research? Veltar pressed. Our records indicate he was investigating historical patterns. Zara tilted her head, looking genuinely confused. Father studied old stories, songs, and poems from dead peoples. I did not understand his work. Did he share any of his conclusions with you? He said the universe was full of sad endings, Zara replied. That civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. I asked him why, but he said I was too young to understand. Marcus had to admire the cleverness of her response. She was telling a version of the truth while completely obscuring its significance. To the Vorthak, it would sound like the philosophical musings of an academic shared with a child who couldn't grasp the deeper meaning. And your current guardian? Veltar asked, his attention shifting to Marcus. What are his intentions regarding your future? Dr. Chun saved me, Zara said, and for a moment her voice dropped back to its natural childlike quality. He promised to take care of me, to be my family. The human concept of adoption is unusual, Veltar observed. Most species would simply transfer custody to appropriate authorities. Marcus stepped forward slightly. With respect, Coordinator, Zara has already lost her entire species. Separating her from the one person she trusts would be cruel and potentially harmful to her psychological development. Dr. Chin studies alien cultures, Zara added helpfully. He understands my needs better than most humans would. One of the other Vorthak consulted a crystalline device that appeared to be some kind of data recorder. Our records indicate that humans often form emotional attachments to other species. Dogs, cats, various mammals. This appears to be an extension of that behavior. Marcus bit back his irritation at being compared to someone who had adopted a pet. My relationship with Zara is based on mutual respect and her need for stability, not some primitive bonding instinct. Of course, Veltar said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Still, we must consider what is best for the child's long-term welfare. The Galactic Preservation Council maintains several worlds specifically designed for the care of orphaned individuals from extinct species. Orphanages, Marcus said flatly. You're talking about putting her in an institutional care facility. Specialized environments where she can maintain her cultural heritage while receiving appropriate care, Veltar corrected. Zara suddenly removed the translation device and looked up at Marcus with genuine fear. Please don't let them take me away. I want to stay with you. The raw emotion in her voice was so convincing that Marcus felt his own protective instincts surge, even knowing it was partially performance. He knelt down beside her, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Nobody's taking you anywhere you don't want to go, Marcus said firmly. I promise to be your father, and that means protecting you. Dr. Chun, Veltar said, while your intentions are admirable, you must consider the practical difficulties. The child will need specialized education in her people's culture and history. She will require social contact with others of her developmental level. Most importantly, she will need preparation for eventual relocation to a world more suited to her species' biology. What if I could address all those concerns while keeping her with me? Marcus asked. I'm a xenobiologist. I can ensure she receives appropriate cultural education. The research station has excellent educational facilities and other families with children. And as for relocation, Marcus paused, making it seem like he was thinking quickly. The human colonies are extremely diverse. I'm sure we can find suitable living arrangements. The three Vorthak conferred among themselves in their harmonic language, their crystalline bodies resonating with complex tones that seemed almost musical. Finally, Veltar turned back to Marcus and Zura. We are prepared to offer a compromise, he said. The child may remain in your custody for an initial period of, let us say, 1 standard year. During this time, you will be required to file regular reports on her psychological and educational development. A Vorthak cultural advisor will visit periodically to ensure her heritage is being properly preserved. Marcus felt Zara tense against him. Regular monitoring would make their long-term plans much more difficult to execute. But refusing outright would likely result in Zara being taken immediately. That seems reasonable, Marcus said carefully, though I would want assurance that these visits would be scheduled in advance and conducted with appropriate sensitivity to Zara's emotional needs. Naturally, Veltar agreed. We have no desire to traumatize the child further. Our goal is simply to ensure her welfare and proper development. And after the year? Marcus asked. We will reassess the situation based on the child's progress and your reports. If she has adapted well to human society and maintained connection to her heritage, perhaps a longer arrangement might be considered. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than Marcus had hoped for. More importantly, it gave them time to plan their next moves. I accept your terms, Marcus said, but I want them documented in an official agreement. No changes without mutual consent. Dr. Chun, Veltar said with what might have been amusement. You negotiate like a diplomat rather than a scientist. I protect my family like a father, Marcus replied. Which is what I am now. Veltar studied them both for a long moment, his crystalline features unreadable. Very well. The agreement will be formalized. But, understand, Dr. Chun, that this arrangement is dependent on your full cooperation with our oversight protocols. I understand, Marcus said, as long as those protocols respect Zara's needs and dignity. As the Vorthak prepared to leave, Marcus felt Zara slip something small into his hand. When he glanced down, he saw it was a data chip, so small it looked like a grain of sand. She had somehow transferred information from her data pad without anyone noticing. Dr. Chun, Veltar said as he reached the docking bay entrance. A word of advice. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for those who draw unwanted attention. It would be unfortunate if anything were to happen to you or the child due to unnecessary risks. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus nodded acknowledgement while keeping his expression neutral. We appreciate your concern for our safety, coordinator. After the Vorthack departed, the research station felt almost unnaturally quiet. Marcus found himself in his quarters with Zara, both of them staring at the small data chip she had managed to pass him. What's on it? Marcus asked. Everything my father knew about the Great Filter, Zara said. His research, his theories, and, most importantly, his evidence that the silence has been operating for millions of years. Marcus examined the tiny device. This could change everything. It could, Zara agreed. But first we need to understand it ourselves. And we need to be very careful about who we trust with this information. Marcus thought about the Vorthack's threat, the monitoring that would begin soon, and the incredible responsibility that had just fallen into his lap. What happens now? Now we become a real family, Zara said simply. Because if we're going to convince them that I'm just a traumatized child being cared for by a compassionate human, we need to actually believe it ourselves sometimes. Marcus looked at this extraordinary being who had somehow become his daughter through a combination of circumstances and choice. Are you ready for that? Being part of a human family. Zara smiled. The first genuinely 6 months into their arrangement, Marcus had learned that being a father to an alien child was far more complicated than any xenobiology textbook could have prepared him for. Zara had adapted to human customs with remarkable speed, but she had also retained aspects of her heritage that sometimes led to fascinating cultural collisions. Father, Zara said one morning as they shared breakfast in their quarters aboard the research station, I need to ask you something about human emotional expression. Marcus looked up from his coffee, noting the careful way Zara was arranging her food into geometric patterns, a Kithara habit she couldn't seem to break. What about it? Yesterday, when Lieutenant Morrison made that joke about my appearance, you became angry. But you didn't show it the way other humans do. Your face didn't change, your voice remained calm. But I could feel your emotions anyway. Marcus paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. Over the months, he'd noticed that Zara seemed unusually perceptive about his moods, but he'd attributed it to her natural intelligence rather than any telepathic ability. You can sense my emotions? He asked. Not exactly, Zara said, tilting her head in that characteristic gesture that always made her appear younger than her actual maturity level suggested. It's more like, I can feel the shape of your thoughts. Humans think differently when they're angry, even when they're controlling their expressions. Marcus set down his fork. Is that how you knew I was different from the others when we first met? Partly, Zara confirmed. Most humans think in very linear patterns. Problem, analysis, solution. But you think in spirals. You consider multiple possibilities simultaneously and let them influence each other. It's similar to how Kithara minds work, which is probably why I felt comfortable with you. Have you been reading my mind this entire time? Marcus asked, not sure if he should feel violated or impressed. I can't read specific thoughts, Zara explained. It's more like sensing the emotional texture of your thinking. And only when we're close together, like family members often are. The word family still sent a small jolt through Marcus. Over the past 6 months, their relationship had evolved from desperate necessity to genuine affection. Zara had a brilliant mind combined with a dry sense of humor that constantly surprised him. In return, she seemed to find his human quirks endlessly fascinating. Is this something all Kithara could do? Marcus asked. To varying degrees, Zara said. My father was particularly gifted. He used to say that understanding how other beings think was the key to understanding how the universe works. Marcus thought about this as he finished his breakfast. Zara's telepathic sensitivity might explain how her father had been able to piece together the patterns of the Great Filter. If he could sense the thought processes of multiple species, he would have had insights that purely analytical approaches might miss. Speaking of your father's work, Marcus said, I wanted to discuss some of the implications of what we've been studying. Over the past months, they had carefully analyzed the data Zara had saved from her father's research. The picture that emerged was both fascinating and terrifying. The evidence suggested that for millions of years, an intelligence referred to as the silence had been systematically preventing species from reaching what they termed transcendence threshold, the point where a species became capable of truly independent technological and social development. I've been thinking about the pattern, Marcus continued. Every species that gets eliminated or managed seems to follow the same development path. They achieve space travel, expand to multiple worlds, begin developing advanced AI or quantum technologies, and then they encounter the Vorthack. Or the Devourers, Zara added grimly, depending on how cooperative they are. But humanity's development has been different, Marcus said. We've been expanding aggressively for decades, and we're already working on technologies that should have drawn their attention. Yet they only showed up after they detected you. Zara paused in her geometric food arrangement. I've been thinking about that too. There are several possible explanations, such as, the first possibility is that humanity is simply too new. You've been spacefaring for less than a century. Most species take millennia to reach the transcendence threshold. Marcus nodded. What's the second possibility? That humanity is developing in a way the silence doesn't recognize as threatening, Zara said. Your technology is advancing rapidly, but it's advancing chaotically. Most species follow logical progression patterns, master one technology completely before moving to the next. Humans seem to work on dozens of different approaches simultaneously, making us harder to track. Marcus asked. Making you harder to predict, Zara corrected. The silence operates by identifying development patterns and intervening at specific points. But if they can't predict your next breakthrough, they can't time their intervention effectively. Marcus considered this. It was true that human technological development often seemed haphazard compared to other species. They would make breakthrough discoveries in quantum physics while still using primitive chemical rockets, or develop advanced AI while their transportation systems remained relatively crude. What's the third possibility? Marcus asked. Zara's expression grew more serious. That they're letting humanity develop specifically because they want to see what you'll do. That you're being used as a test case or experiment. The thought sent a chill down Marcus's spine. An experiment in what? Unknown, Zara said. But my father believed that the silence itself might be facing some kind of challenge. Something that required them to reassess their approach to galactic management. Before Marcus could respond, his communication device chimed with an incoming message. The sender identification made his stomach drop. It was from Coordinator Veltar. Our Vorthack friend wants to schedule a visit, Marcus said, reading the message. Next week. Standard evaluation protocols. Zara straightened, her casual demeanor immediately shifting to alertness. This will be our fourth evaluation. They're increasing the frequency. Is that significant? Marcus asked. It means they're either becoming suspicious or they're preparing for a change in our arrangement, Zara said. Neither option is good. Marcus had dreaded this possibility. The Vorthack evaluations had been routine so far, perfunctory interviews where Zara played the role of a gradually healing child while Marcus demonstrated his competence as a guardian. But each visit felt like walking on increasingly thin ice. What do we do? Marcus asked. We prepare, Zara said. But this time, we need to be ready for the possibility that they might try to separate us. They can't, Marcus said immediately. Our agreement specifies. Father, Zara interrupted gently. Agreements only matter if both parties choose to honor them. And the Vorthack are very good at finding legal justifications for doing what they want to do. Marcus felt that familiar surge of protective anger that seemed to come naturally now whenever Zara was threatened. Then, we need a backup plan. Already working on it, Zara said. But I need to ask you something important. If it came down to a choice between protecting me and protecting the research data, what would you choose? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. I can't make that choice. You might have to, Zara said. The information my father discovered could be the key to humanity's survival. But keeping me safe and with you is important too. If the Vorthack take me, they'll eventually discover what I know. Marcus stared at his daughter, and he had come to think of her as truly his daughter, regardless of biology. The idea of sacrificing her for any reason, even the survival of humanity, was unbearable. There has to be a third option, Marcus said. There usually is, Zara agreed. But finding it requires thinking like a human rather than like any rational species would. Meaning? Zara smiled. Meaning we need to do something so completely illogical that the Vorthack won't see it coming. Over the next week, they developed what Marcus privately thought of as the most insane plan he'd ever been part of. It relied on several assumptions about Vorthack psychology that might be completely wrong, and its success would require a level of deception that made him uncomfortable. When Coordinator Veltar arrived for the evaluation, he brought 2 additional Vorthack with him, a detail that immediately put both Marcus and Zara on high alert. Dr. Chun, Veltar said as they gathered in the station's conference room. We have some concerns about the child's development that we'd like to discuss. What kind of concerns? Marcus asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Our analysis of your reports suggests that Zara has been adapting to human culture more thoroughly than we would normally expect. There are indications that she may be losing connection to her heritage. Marcus felt Zara tense beside him. They had been careful to include references to Kithara cultural practices in their reports, but apparently not enough to satisfy the Vorthack. I've been working hard to maintain her connection to her people's traditions, Marcus said. She practices Kithara meditation techniques daily, studies their historical texts, and I've been learning their language so we can communicate in her native tongue. These efforts are commendable, Veltar said. But our experts believe that prolonged exposure to human society may be causing permanent changes to her psychological development. Changes that could make eventual relocation to a Kithara preservation world difficult. Marcus felt the trap closing around them. The Vorthack were preparing to justify removing Zara from his care, probably permanently this time. What are you suggesting? Marcus asked. We believe it would be best if Zara were transferred to a specialized facility where she can receive more appropriate cultural education. Dr. Chun, your attachment to the child is understandable, but you must consider what is truly best for her long-term development. No, Zara said suddenly, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. I don't want to leave my father. Veltar turned his attention to her. Child, you must understand that your current situation, while comfortable, is not ideal for preserving your heritage. Among your own kind, I don't have my own kind, Zara interrupted, her voice carrying a note of desperation that was only partly performance. They're all dead. Dr. Chun is my family now. Zara, one of the other Vorthacks said in a gentler tone, we understand your attachment, but you have responsibilities to your species. You carry the last remnants of Kithara culture. That heritage must be preserved. Then, let me preserve it my way, Zara said, standing up from her chair. I don't want to be locked away in some preserve like a museum exhibit. I want to live. I want to learn. I want to be part of something bigger than just survival. Marcus watched the exchange with growing tension. Zara was walking a fine line between maintaining her cover and expressing genuine frustration. The child is confused. The confrontation with the Vorthack lasted 3 tense hours. Marcus found himself arguing not just for Zara's custody, but for the very concept of human family structures. The Vorthack seemed genuinely puzzled by his willingness to risk his career, his safety, and his future for a being who wasn't even his biological offspring. Dr. Chun, Veltar said as the debate wound down, your emotional attachment to the child is remarkable. Most species would defer to superior authority in such matters. Humans aren't most species, Marcus replied, surprised by his own steadiness. We tend to be stubborn about protecting the people we love. Love, Veltar repeated, as if testing the concept. You claim to love this child despite knowing her for less than 1 standard year. Marcus looked down at Zara, who was watching the exchange with those unnaturally mature violet eyes. Time doesn't determine love, he said. Character does. And Zara has more character than most adults I know. The Vorthack exchanged their harmonic communications once more. Finally, Veltar turned back to them. Very well, Dr. Chun. We will allow this arrangement to continue, but with additional conditions. You will relocate to a human colony world where the child can have more normal social contact with others her apparent age. You will submit to monthly rather than quarterly evaluations. And you will accept the permanent assignment of a Vorthack cultural advisor to ensure the child's heritage is properly maintained. Marcus felt both relief and apprehension. They had won the immediate battle, but the new conditions would make their long-term plans much more difficult. I accept your terms, Marcus said, with one condition of my own. Zara, and I choose which colony world. We need to find somewhere that will be suitable for her particular needs. Agreed, Veltar said. You have 60 standard days to make the transition. After the Vorthack departed, Marcus and Zara sat in stunned silence for several minutes. They had managed to stay together, but they both understood that this was likely their last chance. Any future challenges to Vorthack authority would not be met with such flexibility. "Thank you," Zara said finally, "for being willing to fight for me." "You don't need to thank me for that," Marcus replied. "That's what fathers do." "Is it?" Zara asked. Among the Kithara, child-rearing was handled by educational collectives. Individual emotional bonds were considered inefficient. Marcus thought about this. Maybe that's part of why humans are different. Our children aren't just educated. They're loved, protected. We invest ourselves in them emotionally, not just intellectually. And that investment makes you willing to take irrational risks? Zara asked. "It makes us willing to fight for what matters," Marcus corrected. Which brings up our next challenge. We need to find a colony world, but more than that, we need to find allies. People who can help us prepare for what's coming. Over the following weeks, they researched potential destinations while quietly beginning to implement the broader plan they had been developing. Marcus used his academic connections to arrange transfers of his research data to colleagues on various worlds. Zara, meanwhile, had been working on something she called inheritance packages, carefully designed information dumps that could be transmitted automatically if certain conditions were met. "The key is redundancy," Zara explained as they worked in Marcus's quarters. "If the Vorthack eliminate us, the information still survives. But it has to be distributed carefully, too much too fast, and they'll suppress it before anyone can act on it." "How are you planning to distribute it?" Marcus asked. "Through human networks," Zara said. "Academic institutions, military research divisions, corporate laboratories. Your species' tendency to compete and share information simultaneously makes you very hard to control. Even if the Vorthack shut down some sources, others will continue the work." Marcus watched Zara work, still amazed by her combination of childlike appearance and sophisticated strategic thinking. "You've been planning this since we first met, haven't you?" "I've been planning something like this since my father first explained the Great Filter to me," Zara admitted. "But I didn't know how to implement it until I met humans. Your species is uniquely suited to this kind of distributed resistance." "Because we're illogical?" Marcus asked with a slight smile. "Because you're persistent," Zara corrected. "Most species, when faced with a superior force, either submit or fight directly and get eliminated. Humans do something different. You adapt. You find ways to survive and continue working toward your goals even under oppression." Marcus thought about human history, the countless examples of resistance movements, underground railroads, and survival strategies developed under impossible conditions. "You think that will work against something as powerful as the silence?" "I think it's the only thing that might work," Zara said. "Direct confrontation is hopeless. But if enough humans understand the threat and begin working on solutions simultaneously across multiple worlds and research institutions, the Vorthack won't be able to stop all of them," Marcus finished. "It's brilliant. Assuming we can find the right people to trust with this information. That's where our relocation comes in," Zara said. "I've been researching colony worlds, and I think I've found the perfect place." Marcus looked up from his work. "Where?" "New Geneva," Zara said. "It's a research colony with major universities, corporate labs, and a significant military presence. But, more importantly, it has something most worlds don't, which is a history of successful resistance," Zara said. 20 years ago, the colonial government tried to suppress research into certain technologies deemed too dangerous. The research community ignored the order and continued their work in secret. When the authorities tried to crack down, the entire academic and military establishment united against them. The suppression order was withdrawn within 6 months. Marcus felt a surge of excitement. A world full of people who don't respect authority when it conflicts with their pursuit of knowledge. "Exactly," Zara said. "And the perfect place to begin building a resistance movement disguised as academic research." 2 months later, Marcus and Zara found themselves settling into a comfortable house on New Geneva's university campus. Marcus had secured a position as a professor of xenobiology, while Zara was enrolled in the colony's advanced education program for gifted children. The Vorthack cultural advisor, who introduced herself as Healer Sildana, proved to be less intrusive than they had feared. She was genuinely interested in Kithera culture and seemed content to conduct her oversight through weekly cultural education sessions with Zara. She's different from the others, Zara observed after their third session with Sildana. Her thought patterns are more flexible. Marcus had noticed the same thing. Unlike the rigid bureaucrats they had dealt with before, Sildana seemed genuinely curious about human society and asked thoughtful questions about their family dynamic. "Do you think she suspects anything?" Marcus asked. "I think she's beginning to question some of her own people's assumptions," Zara said carefully, "which could be either helpful or dangerous." As they settled into their new life, Marcus was amazed by how naturally Zara adapted to the colony's social environment. Her apparent youth made it easy for her to make friends with human children, while her actual maturity allowed her to engage with adult researchers and academics. More importantly, she had begun implementing her inheritance packages. Through carefully crafted research proposals and academic collaborations, information about the Great Filter was gradually being introduced into the colony's intellectual ecosystem. Dr. Martinez is beginning to ask the right questions about galactic population patterns, Zara reported during one of their evening planning sessions. And Professor Williams has started researching historical patterns of technological suppression in human societies. "Anyone getting suspicious about the source of these ideas?" Marcus asked. "Not yet," Zara said. "I'm being very careful to let them think they're drawing their own conclusions. Humans are naturally curious about patterns and inconsistencies. Once you point them in the right direction, they tend to keep investigating on their own." Marcus marveled at her sophistication. In less than a year, his alien daughter had developed a deeper understanding of human psychology than many professional anthropologists achieved in their entire careers. "There's something else," Zara said. "I've been analyzing communication patterns between the various Vorthack we've encountered. I think there might be divisions within their society that we could exploit." "What kind of divisions?" Marcus asked. Healer Sildana represents a faction that believes in cultural preservation through integration rather than isolation. They think species survive better when they're allowed to evolve and adapt rather than being frozen in stasis. Marcus considered this. And the other faction? Traditionalists like Veltar who believe in strict separation and control. They see any deviation from established patterns as a threat to galactic stability. "Could we use this?" Marcus asked. "Maybe," Zara said. "But it would require taking an enormous risk. We'd have to reveal at least part of what we know to Sildana and hope she chooses cooperation over duty." Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle over him. Every decision they made could have consequences far beyond their own survival. "What do you think?" Marcus asked. "Is it worth the risk?" Zara was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at New Geneva's 3 moons. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of her vanished people. "My father used to say that the greatest tragedy wasn't the loss of life, but the loss of possibility. Every species that gets eliminated or suppressed represents paths not taken, discoveries never made, songs never sung." She turned back to Marcus. "If there's even a chance that we could change the way the galaxy works, if we could replace suppression with cooperation, then, yes, it's worth the risk." Marcus looked at his extraordinary daughter, this small being who carried the weight of her entire species while planning to save his. He thought about the data chip hidden in their house, the resistance network slowly forming across the colony, and the impossible choice between safety and hope. "Then, we move forward," Marcus said. "Together." "Together," Zara agreed. "As a family." As they began planning their most dangerous gambit yet, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since that first day in the medical bay. He had gone from being a xenobiologist studying alien cultures to being the father of a revolution that could reshape galactic civilization. Looking at Zara as she worked on their plans, Marcus realized that somewhere along the way, pretending to be her father had stopped being pretense. She wasn't just the last of the Kithera anymore. She was his daughter, brilliant and brave and determined to make the universe better for all thinking beings. And if that meant taking on the most powerful force in the galaxy, well, that was what families did for each other. They protected what mattered, no matter the cost. The future remained uncertain, but Marcus was no longer afraid. He had learned something important over the past year. sometimes the most illogical decision was also the most human one. And in a universe ruled by cold logic, humanity's stubborn irrationality might just be their greatest strength. The stars beyond New Geneva's atmosphere held both promise and peril, but Marcus and Zara would face whatever came together, as father and daughter, as the last hope of a dead species and the protectors of a living one. And perhaps, if they were very clever and very lucky, they might just change everything. Tar said to Marcus, human concepts of family and belonging are influencing her judgment. Maybe, Marcus said, standing to put a protective hand on Zara's shoulder. Or maybe she's growing up and learning to think for herself. Isn't that what any parent wants for their child? Dr. Chun, Veltar said, you are not her parent. You are her temporary guardian. The distinction is important. Not to me, Marcus said firmly, and not to her. We're a family now, regardless of species. If you want to take her away from me, you'll have to prove that your alternative is better for her welfare, not just more convenient for your bureaucracy. The three Vorthak exchanged those harmonic communications again. When they turned back, Veltar's expression was somehow more intense than before. Dr. Chun, he said, are you prepared to contest our authority in this matter? It was the moment Marcus had been dreading. The moment when their carefully maintained deception might collapse entirely. But, looking at Zara, brilliant, brave, extraordinary Zara who had asked him to pretend to be her father and ended up making him one for real, he found his answer was surprisingly easy. Yes, Marcus said simply. I am. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could feel the weight of the decision he'd just made, not just for himself and Zara, but potentially for all of humanity. He was directly challenging one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy over the custody of a child. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he realized that this was exactly the kind of illogical, emotional decision that Zara had said the Vorthak wouldn't expect from a rational being. Perhaps that would be enough to save them both. Happy expression he'd seen from her. I've been ready since the moment you agreed to pretend to be my father. I just wasn't sure if you were ready to pretend to have an alien daughter. I don't think I'm pretending anymore, Marcus said, and was surprised to realize how true that statement was. Somewhere between protecting her from the Vorthak and watching her courage in the face of impossible circumstances, his feelings had shifted from professional concern to something much deeper. Good, Zara said, because the hardest part is just beginning. Learning to be human while staying true to what I am. Learning to be your daughter while carrying the knowledge that could save or doom our species. Marcus picked up the data chip, feeling its weight despite its tiny size. Then, let's start learning. As they settled in to begin studying her father's research, Marcus realized that his life had irrevocably changed. He was no longer just a xenobiologist studying alien cultures from a safe academic distance. He was now an adoptive father to the last member of an extinct species, a keeper of dangerous secrets, and possibly one of the few people who could help prepare humanity for a threat they didn't even know existed. Looking at Zara as she began explaining her father's work, Marcus felt both terrified and honored to have earned her trust. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family, strange as it was. Deep beside him, small but determined, Marcus realized that his life had just become far more complicated and infinitely more meaningful than he had ever imagined possible. The future of humanity might depend on how well he could learn to be a father to an extraordinary alien child. And, despite the terror of what lay ahead, he found himself looking forward to the challenge. Marcus looked at this small, extraordinary being who had just asked him to help save not just humanity, but potentially all intelligent life in the galaxy. The magnitude of it was overwhelming, but there was something in Zara's eyes, a determination that transcended her apparent youth, that made him believe it might actually be possible. All right, Marcus said, but we start small. You're still recovering from trauma, and I'm still learning how to be your guardian. The galaxy can wait a few days while we figure out how to be a family. Zara smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from her. Thank you, Father, for believing in me. As Marcus settled back in his chair to watch over Zara as she slept, he couldn't help but wonder what he had just agreed to. But, looking at the peaceful expression on the girl's face, he realized that whatever challenges lay ahead, he was committed now. This strange little being had asked him to pretend to be her father, but Marcus was beginning to suspect that the pretense might become more real than either of them expected. The future of humanity might well depend on how good he could become at being a parent to the last member of an alien species. It was not a responsibility he had ever imagined taking on. But, as he watched Zara sleep, Marcus found himself determined to be worthy of her trust. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, and new discoveries. But, tonight, he was simply a father watching over his daughter, regardless of the fact that they belonged to entirely different species. And, somehow, that felt like the most important thing in the universe.